In every documented collapse where winter arrived before order was restored, the death curve followed the temperature, not the violence. Hospitals failing, fuel lines frozen, power grids dead, people did not die screaming, they went quiet. Cold does not announce itself as a threat. It infiltrates decision-making first, then coordination, then will. By the time the body fails, the mind has already surrendered. This is why cold survival mistakes are the most lethal errors after collapse. They don't look like mistakes. They feel reasonable, even comforting, right up until the moment movement stops. Most people enter cold environments with peacetime assumptions. They believe warmth is a matter of comfort. They believe suffering is loud and obvious. They believe the body will warn them before failure. All of these beliefs are false. In a post-collapse environment, cold is not weather. It is an adversarial force. It strips calories faster than hunger, drains judgment faster than fear, and kills without panic. The margin for correction is effectively zero. This analysis does not exist to help you endure winter. That language belongs to a world with rescue, infrastructure, and second chances. This is about operational survival when no system will intervene, when every decision must justify its energy cost, when mistakes compound invisibly, when confidence is more dangerous than ignorance. The people who die first are not the unprepared. They are the ones who think they understand cold. They light fires at the wrong time. They move to stay warm. They overdress. They sleep when they should not. They trust shelter that only looks protective. Each of these errors feels logical inside a collapsing nervous system. Each one accelerates heat loss, exposure, and cognitive decay. From this point forward, abandon comfort thinking. Cold survival after collapse is not about warmth, it is about control. Control of heat exchange, control of movement, control of timing, control of the mind under thermal stress. Fail at any one of these, and the outcome is not negotiable. The most common fatal instinct in cold environments is the urge to light a fire. Fire feels like survival because in the old world it was associated with safety, civilization, and rescue. After collapse, fire is none of those things. It is exposure, dependence, and false security rolled into one. People die not because they fail to make fire, but because they make it at the wrong time, for the wrong reason, and then organize their behavior around it. Fire is not warmth. Fire is a signal. Light, smoke, heat, shimmer, smell, all of it travels farther than you think in cold air. In a collapsed environment, anything that broadcasts your position also broadcasts your resources. The colder it is, the more desperate others become, and the more valuable your fire appears. You are not creating safety, you are creating a target. Many people are found frozen near extinguished fires because the fire drew attention, forced defensive stress, disrupted rest, and ultimately failed when fuel ran out. There is a second mistake more subtle and more lethal: using fire to replace thermal discipline. When people rely on fire, they stop managing their own heat exchange. They sit too close, sweat without noticing, remove layers, dry nothing properly, and allow moisture to accumulate in clothing and insulation. The moment the fire goes out, and it always does, the body crashes. Wet layers, exhausted fuel reserves, and a false sense of readiness combine into rapid hypothermia. Fire did not save them. Fire delayed failure while multiplying its severity. Fire also drains energy at the worst possible time. Gathering fuel in cold environments burns calories exponentially faster than people calculate. Chopping, hauling, breaking frozen wood, feeding a flame through the night. This is continuous labor. Calories lost to fire maintenance are calories not available for heat production later. Many deaths attributed to extreme cold are actually energy bankruptcy caused by unnecessary fire dependency. Another error is lighting fires to calm fear rather than solve a thermal problem. Fire provides psychological relief. That relief is dangerous. Calm feels like stability, but it often masks ongoing heat loss through the ground. Wind exposure, or evaporative cooling. People sit still by a fire while their core temperature continues to drop because the sensation of warmth on the skin overrides deeper physiological signals. Cold kills through deception, and fire is one of its most effective accomplices. The operational principle is simple and unforgiving. Fire is a tool, not a solution. It is used briefly, deliberately, and only when it solves a specific problem that cannot be solved more quietly. Cooking, drying critical gear, controlled heat infusion in extreme cases, and then it is shut down. Survival heat comes from insulation, positioning, metabolic management, and terrain control, not from flames. If you cannot survive without a fire, you will not survive when fire is unavailable. And in collapse conditions, fire is never guaranteed. Cold kills people who think clothing is passive protection. The belief that thicker means safer is one of the most persistent and deadly misunderstandings in cold survival. Clothing is not armor. It is a system. And if that system is mismanaged, it becomes an accelerant of heat loss rather than a barrier against it. The first error is overdressing during movement. People fear cold, so they layer heavily before exertion. Within minutes, the body heats, sweat forms, and moisture saturates inner layers. In cold environments, sweat is not discomfort. It is a countdown. Moisture destroys insulation by collapsing trapped air, and evaporation strips heat directly from the skin. You do not feel the danger immediately because exertion masks cooling. The body feels warm while it is actively sabotaging its own thermal reserves. When movement stops, the trap closes. Heat loss accelerates, energy drains, and the window for correction disappears. The second error is treating all layers as equal. Most people stack clothing without understanding function. Insulation, vapor management, wind resistance, and heat retention are different roles. When these roles are confused, the system fails. Cotton layers trap moisture and kill heat retention. Breathable outer layers leak wind and strip warmth. Non-breathable shells trap sweat and create internal rain. Each mistake compounds silently until core temperature begins to fall faster than it can be restored. There is also a fatal misunderstanding about feeling cold. Cold survival is not about staying comfortable. Slight cold during movement is not a failure. It is a control state. Feeling warm while active usually means you are losing the battle long term. Survivors manage discomfort to preserve dryness. Victims chase warmth and create wet insulation they cannot recover from. Another overlooked mistake is neglecting extremities and pressure points. Heat loss through hands, feet, neck, and ground contact outpaces what most people calculate. Tight footwear restricts circulation and accelerates freezing. Compressed insulation under the body bleeds heat into the ground regardless of air temperature. People focus on visible layers and ignore contact physics. The ground does not care how expensive your jacket is. The operational principle is ruthless. Clothing is an active process, not a static choice. Layers are added and removed dynamically. Movement is planned to avoid sweating. Dryness is treated as a life-critical resource. Insulation is protected from compression. Wind and moisture are enemies equal to temperature itself. After collapse, No one dies because they lacked clothing. They die because they wore it wrong, trusted it blindly, and let comfort override control. Movement is where cold finishes most people, not because they were too slow, but because they moved at all. In collapse conditions, movement in cold is not exercise, exploration, or progress. It is controlled expenditure of life. Every step burns calories. Every breath pulls moisture from the lungs. Every minute of motion trades future heat for present comfort. The dead are often found along routes, not in shelters, because movement feels productive while it quietly empties the account that keeps you alive. The most common mistake is moving to stay warm. This instinct is deeply ingrained and catastrophically wrong after collapse. Movement produces heat, but it does so by burning energy at a rate that cannot be replenished in cold environments. Food is scarce, digestion is inefficient in hypothermic conditions, and dehydration is constant, even when thirst is absent. The warmth you generate through motion is borrowed heat. When you stop, the debt comes due with interest. Movement also generates sweat, and sweat is the hidden executioner. Even moderate exertion in cold climates produces moisture that compromises insulation. People misinterpret the sensation of warming as success, unaware they are manufacturing future heat loss. When they pause, to rest, to observe, to sleep, evaporative cooling accelerates, and core temperature drops faster than it would have if they had remained still from the beginning. Another fatal error is unnecessary relocation. After collapse, people believe they must go somewhere safer. They abandon marginal shelter to search for better shelter, unaware that exposure during transit is deadlier than suboptimal conditions at rest. Cold punishes indecision. A mediocre position you can control is superior to a theoretical refuge you may never reach. Many freeze within sight of shelter they would have survived in had they stayed put. Cold also degrades judgment, and movement amplifies this effect. As the body cools, decision-making slows, risk assessment fails, and time perception distorts. People underestimate distance, overestimate stamina, and misread environmental cues. They keep moving because stopping feels like failure. In reality, continued movement is often the final error before collapse. There is a tactical cost to visibility as well. Movement creates tracks, broken crusts, sound, and silhouette. In cold environments, these signatures persist. You are not just spending energy. You are leaving a record of your presence. In a post-collapse world, that record can be followed by people who are colder, hungrier, and more desperate than you. The operational principle is non-negotiable. Movement must be justified by survival gain, not comfort or fear. You move to secure shelter, critical resources, or positional advantage, and you move with strict limits, short distances, controlled pace, pre-planned stops, minimal sweat, maximum concealment. Cold does not kill the stationary first, it kills the restless. Shelter is where people believe they are safe, and that belief is what kills them. After collapse, most deaths from cold occur inside something that looks like protection. A roof, a wall, a vehicle, a tent. These objects create psychological security while quietly bleeding heat in every direction. Shelter that is not understood as a thermal system is not shelter. It is a delayed exposure chamber. The first mistake is prioritizing enclosure over insulation. People seek walls before they seek separation from the ground and air movement. Cold does not attack from one direction. It drains through contact, convection, and radiation simultaneously. A solid-looking structure that allows wind to circulate or ground cold to wick upward can be more dangerous than open terrain where heat loss is at least predictable. Many freeze inside abandoned buildings because the structure amplifies airflow and moisture while offering no real thermal control. The second error is trusting shelter without modifying it. In the old world, buildings were systems supported by heat, power, and maintenance. After collapse, they are shells. Broken windows, unseen drafts, damp floors, and exposed concrete turn them into heat sinks. People enter, stop thinking, and settle in. The shelter does not kill them immediately. It drains them slowly while they assume the problem has been solved. Vehicles are one of the most deceptive shelters of all. They feel enclosed, familiar, and windproof. In reality, they trap moisture, conduct cold through metal, and encourage inactivity without insulation from the ground. Sleeping in a vehicle without proper thermal control often leads to waking up colder than the surrounding air would have caused. Many never wake at all. Another lethal mistake is ignoring orientation and environment. Shelter placement, relative to wind, slope, ground type, and exposure, matters more than appearance. Cold air flows downhill. Wind accelerates through gaps and corridors. Wet ground strips heat faster than snow. People choose shelter based on visibility and convenience instead of thermal physics. The result is predictable failure. The final error is remaining static without monitoring decline. Shelter creates the illusion of stability, so people stop assessing their own condition. Core temperature drops gradually, shivering becomes uncontrollable, then stops. Mental fog sets in. At that point, even corrective action may be impossible. Shelter did not preserve life. It concealed the rate at which it was being lost. The operational principle is exacting. Shelter must control heat exchange, not just block the elements. You insulate from the ground first, you eliminate airflow second, you manage moisture constantly. You choose location based on cold behavior, not human convenience. And you never assume shelter equals safety without continuous verification. After collapse, the most dangerous place to die from cold is somewhere that feels protected. Sleep is when cold takes control. Not because the environment changes, but because you do. Consciousness is the last defense layer against hypothermia, and when it drops, cold advances without resistance. After collapse, most people do not freeze while fighting the cold. They freeze while resting from it. The primary mistake is treating sleep as recovery. In cold conditions, sleep is exposure. Metabolic output drops. Muscle activity stops. Shivering weakens or ceases entirely. Core temperature begins to fall the moment the body becomes still. People tell themselves they just need a few hours, unaware that their heat production has already fallen below the survival threshold. They close their eyes, believing rest will restore them. It never does. Another fatal error is sleeping to escape discomfort. Cold fatigue creates an overwhelming urge to lie down. This is not rest. It is neurological surrender. As hypothermia progresses, the brain prioritizes comfort over survival. Sleep feels safe, warm, and deserved. This sensation is a lie produced by failing systems. Many victims are found positioned as if they lay down voluntarily because they did. People also misjudge insulation during sleep. What works while moving fails when stationary. Compressed insulation under the body becomes useless. Breath moisture saturates coverings. Heat bleeds into the ground hour after hour. A setup that feels adequate for 30 minutes becomes lethal over 6 hours. Cold does not rush. It waits. There is also a timing error that kills quietly. People sleep at the wrong thermal moment. They rest after exertion while wet. They sleep before rehydration or caloric intake. They lie down at the coldest part of the cycle, believing darkness equals danger. In reality, Sleeping, when the body is depleted, accelerates heat loss faster than external temperature alone. The most dangerous sign is the absence of struggle. As core temperature drops, the drive to fight weakens, shivering slows, decision-making fades, victims stop adjusting layers, stop repositioning, stop reacting. From the outside, it looks peaceful. From the inside, systems are shutting down in sequence. The operational principle is unforgiving. Sleep is a calculated risk, not a necessity. You only rest when insulation is proven, dryness is absolute, caloric and fluid status are sufficient, and heat loss is controlled. Rest is broken, monitored, and interrupted. Micro-sleeps replace full cycles. Conscious checks override comfort. After collapse, the cold does not need to overpower you. It only needs you to lie down. Cold does not kill through force. It kills through permission. By the time the final mistake is made, no dramatic error is visible. The body is intact. The shelter exists. The plan appears sound. What fails is the decision-making system itself. This is why cold is the most efficient killer after collapse. It turns your own judgment into the weapon. As core temperature drops, the brain does not panic. It simplifies. Risk assessment narrows. Long-term consequences vanish. Immediate comfort becomes the only priority. This is why intelligent, experienced people make decisions that appear irrational from the outside. They stop correcting small problems. They delay adjustments. They tell themselves they will fix it later. Later does not arrive. One of the deadliest psychological failures is false stabilization. The mind interprets a reduction in discomfort as improvement. Shivering slows and is misread as recovery. Fatigue feels like calm. Mental fog feels like rest. Victims believe they have turned the corner, when in reality they have crossed the point of no return. Cold rewards misinterpretation with silence. Another lethal distortion is time collapse. Cold alters perception of duration. Minutes feel short. Tasks feel manageable. Distance feels closer than it is. People postpone action because they believe they have time. They do not. By the time urgency returns, motor control and judgment are already degraded. The correction window closes without warning. There is also the confidence trap. People with knowledge of cold survival are often more vulnerable than novices. Familiarity breeds shortcuts. Experience creates assumptions. They trust their instincts instead of protocols. In cold environments, instinct is based on comfort, not survival math. The body wants warmth now, not survival later. Cold exploits that preference perfectly. Social behavior collapses as well. Communication slows. People withdraw instead of coordinating. Groups fail to notice decline in their own members because everyone is impaired at the same time. No one sounds the alarm because no one feels alarmed. Entire groups freeze within meters of each other without ever recognizing the shared danger. The operational principle is absolute. In cold environments, you do not trust how you feel. You trust rules, you trust thresholds, you trust predetermined actions that override perception. Survival becomes algorithmic. If conditions are met, actions are taken, regardless of comfort, fatigue, or belief. Cold does not argue. It does not threaten. It waits for you to agree with it.